Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Dr. Loretta Breuning, and we're talking about a conversation and work that she has done about our brain and how they work and how we can actually, Dr. Breuning, I don't think anybody has ever really understood that through work, there are ways that we can change all of these diagnoses that we have gotten from medical professionals, especially anxiety and stress. Now, I'm not saying that certain people don't have depression and mental illness that they need help with, but there are those people that can come out of it and change it. And before we went to break, we talked about this concept. I call it a concept. You tell me what it is, but you write about it in the book, and it's mirroring, where somebody in a family will say, my mother was depressed. Her mother was depressed. And I too suffer from that same disorder. And so what would you say to people like that are totally convinced that they have it too?
So first, everyone is mirroring all the time. So it's always first to say, nothing is wrong with me. I'm using my brain the way it's designed to work. If you're not mirroring your family, you're mirroring your peer groups. What we're designed to mirror is rewards and pain. So when one monkey sees another monkey get a reward, they imitate the behavior. When a monkey sees another monkey get bitten, they withdraw from the behavior. That's how a monkey learns without a curriculum development expert. So that's how we learned. So we learned from our family, from the verbal messages, but also how they got rewards. So everyone can think about, how did my family get rewards? How did my family avoid pain? How did my peer group avoid pain and get rewards? And I was mentioning before the break that in my family, I was of a certain religious background, and I wanted to be a good person. We all want to be a good person. And I wanted to be supportive of my mother because that was expected. But my mother was very depressed and very anxious, and to have a life separate from her would trigger her, and she would get really angry. And so I was trying to protect myself from being angry. So I would try to be good by merging with her, but it never worked. It never worked. And so finally I decided I'm going to do something else rather than merge with her. And it was really hard because then I felt like I was a bad person. And then I effectively, in order to do that, I had to put up walls, and that makes you a bad person. But then I learned to focus on the positive.
In her sight, it made you a bad person.
And also in society, because now everyone's giving this message that you should be compassionate and empathetic. And whenever there's something bad in the news, you're supposed to feel everybody's pain, every pain in the whole world.
So were people saying to you invariably that, how could you do this? How could you put up this wall and separate yourself from your mother, who loves you and who is giving you all of giving you life?
Well, more it was my mother, who's needy. She's needy, needy, needy. And no one actually said it to me but her. But I was hearing it in, all the social messages about compassion and whatever. And also I was protecting myself from the bad consequences of how angry she would get if I went and did my own thing. So I looked for sort of secret ways to do my own thing. And ironically for me, one of those was doing homework, because that was one of the few ways that I could do my own thing without her getting mad at me. And I think that's how I became a good student. Homework was like one of the only acceptable refuges. And you see that a lot with young students who are very devoted, that's their little bastion of independence.
Sure. And so we go back to this old saying that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Now you see these behaviors in your mother, and you know that you don't want to replicate those behaviors. But what about those people that don't see those behaviors in their parents, and they end up being
Replicating them.
exactly
Yeah.
who they are
Yeah.
without even knowing because of the mirroring.
Yes, exactly. And even after then, I remember after my mother died, and I still felt bad about her not being happy. Even she was dead, I couldn't make her happy anymore. So yeah, it's very deep. But so the simplest answer to everything is if you focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. But then what you want, if you say, well, what I want is for other people to be happy, well, you can't control other people's brains. The only thing you can control is your own brain. And one way to think about it is if I make myself happy, then they can mirror me. So if you're really, obsessed with pleasing others, make yourself happy to please others. At least it's a first step of escaping from this cage.
Mm-hmm. How did you know, though, Dr. Breuning, that you didn't want, even though your mother was needy, and it probably weighted you down as a young person, how did you escape very early on falling into, well, I'm depressed too. I'm just like my mother. I'm depressed. I mean, it's just who we are. How did you escape that?
Yeah, you know what? In my mother, she never talked about depression. What hers was she felt socially ostracized, and so I repeated that.
You did repeat that.
Yes, I did. I always thought that I was socially ostracized, and then I learned the behaviors to ostracize myself, including, for example, not making eye contact with people. And then when I started reading and learning, and I forced myself to make eye contact, I actually felt panicky. So our old circuits are so powerful. And when you build a new circuit, when you try a new behavior, it feels wrong. And that's why I got a lot of help of all different kinds, mostly alternative, but many different kinds, that when you try something new, it feels wrong, but you have to keep telling yourself, it's right. The only reason it feels wrong is because my old circuit is so well developed. And I learned that the old circuit is electricity in your brain flows wherever the paths are. So that path is lighting up not because it's better or it's true or it's real, but just because it's a road and the cars go on the roads that exist rather than driving a path through the jungle. Mm-hmm. So it's learning how to machete a path through the jungle is how hard it is to think a new thought and trigger a new feeling.
Mm-hmm. And it all starts in your brain, making a decision. Now, you could have said, nobody liked my mother, and then she probably inadvertently said to you,
exactly.
Right, we're not liked. They don't like us for whatever reason.
Exactly.
And then you take that on as truth because that's what your mother says. So At what moment, if there is a moment, or at what time in your life do you say, this was her ideology, but it was what she thought and what she believed, but it's not the truth?
I would say that each little moment was so small, but led to another little moment. And when I truly figured it out is when I had the peace of mind to, let's say, leave the road and risk the back roads. And that wasn't until my kids were grown up and in college, and I was able to take early retirement. I was a college professor for 25 years, and it was like, this is enough. I can't do the same thing forever. And I had a little bit of freedom to take risks. So, but the little steps along the way that made me use that freedom.
Mm. Do you think, Dr. Breuning, most of your adult life you went through saying, people don't really like me?
I missed, you broke up a bit, but most of my life I spent most of my.
Do you think you spent most of your, because I think a lot of us have done that.
Exactly. Yes, I did. And so what I learned, and this is what I learned from animals. Animals don't like each other. This is the whole thing that's not acknowledged. We have this current view that animals are nice to each other, But for all of human history, people lived alongside animals, and you couldn't lie to them. They're nasty to each other. And for a century, in the 20th century, there was research on animals, on their conflict. And now all that is being ignored to talk about animal compassion. But I'm not supposed to talk about this, but I will. I was a docent in a zoo, and zookeepers know that if you put a new animal into an enclosure, like a stranger, they'll kill it in a split second. But they can't say that in public, but they have complex methods to train the animals to tolerate each other. But mammals have a lot of conflict.
As do people.
Yeah. So the first thing was to not blame all the conflict on me. It's like, oh, so it's not my fault. Everybody's dealing with the same crap. And that was so relieving.
Wow. It's an incredible book. And for all of those people that have grown up with wrong thinking just because our parents or whomever raised us believed that this is the way it was, there is hope. Dr. Breuning, we want to thank you, and we want to invite you back because there's so much more to talk about in rewiring your brain for happiness. Tame your anxiety. Before you got to go, quickly tell people how they can connect with you and all of the resources that you have available.
Great. InnerMammalInstitute.org. InnerMammalInstitute.org. And I have lots of resources. I have a lot of books. I have free videos, lots of blogs, slideshows, infographics, all kinds of resources, however you like your information. Oh, and podcasts, lots of podcasts.
There you go. Dr. Breuning, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. Stay on point. We're back right after this.